Welcome to the Storytellers, the radio show and podcast that features those who choose to leave their mark on the world through the art of story. I'm your host, Grace Sammon. I look forward to our time together today. Now, let's meet our storyteller. Karen E. Osborne's novels followed a 40-year career, first as an academic administrator, then as co-owner of the Osborne Group, where she served as a consultant, trainer, and motivational speaker. She has authored 3 novels, 2 of which are already out, Getting It Right and Tangled Lies, which I've had the pleasure of reading. She's about to launch in June of this year her 3rd novel called Reckonings. She is currently living in Florida, where she also hosts a weekly podcast called What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? And she's a native New Yorker like myself, and it is a joy to welcome Karen E. Osborne to the Storyteller microphone. Hello, Karen.
Hello, Grace. It is so nice to be with you again, because we've been together in a number of different things, even though we haven't had the pleasure to meet in person.
And someday we will meet in person, because we have had such a pleasure talking about our parallel lives. And it's so interesting. One of the things I like to bring to the Storyteller microphone is the concept that we are all much more alike than we are different. And you and I have been college administrators, we have owned our own consulting firms, we have done motivational speakers, and all of a sudden, here we are, and we're both novelists with our own shows. What was your journey to getting here? Because I actually don't know that.
You know, I always wanted to be a writer. I always wanted to be a writer, but I found it very hard to fit it into my life until these women started talking to me in my head. And they just insisted. They just, Karen, Alex just said, pay attention. You've got to put it down. And so I actually wrote my first novel, Getting It Right, on airplanes, in hotel rooms, in the Delta Lounge, at the airport. And
we must have met there at some point.
Yes.
But, you know, you talk about that, and I want all of our listeners to know that characters talking in our head actually doesn't make us unwell.
Maybe, I don't know.
It happens all of the time, doesn't it?
It makes us dangerous when we're driving, though. You know, talk about distracted driving. You have to pull over and take notes. No, it's funny. I've heard that from so many writers, that especially people who do character-driven books as opposed to plot-driven books, that the characters just, and they're so real. I was just at a book talk. Mm-hmm. It was a book club, and they were reading Getting It Right, the first novel. And the conversation about the 2 women, it was like they were their girlfriends. It was like they knew them, and they were defending one against the, but she did that because, and I'm just sitting there silent, because they weren't asking me any questions. They were having a whole big discussion about these. And
so you've done your job as a writer when you make your characters as real for your readers as they are when they live in our heads. And I wanted to talk to you about the characters, because there are several things that happened for me, particularly in Getting It Right. There were things like the characters' names, which initially drew me out of the story. So this is where we meet Tuesday, right? And this is where we meet Flyer. And just the fact that they are named differently pulled me out of the story at first, but then instantly I had a feel for who they were, because they had names that weren't mainstream, if you will. And you do a beautiful job of drawing these characters that are flawed, that are multiracial, that have gone through trauma. Is that your goal? What are you trying to accomplish with those things?
Yeah. So one of the big things that I try to accomplish is what you said exactly, that we are more alike, we in the big scheme of people, more alike than we are different. And so all of my books have multiracial characters. They and different people of different colors and different backgrounds, uh, and I just want them to be real, and so that readers will connect and see themselves. And then, of course, flawed characters are always more interesting,
Yes.
you know, especially although it's so important. One of my early readers for Tangled Lies, no, excuse me, for Reckonings, the one that's coming up, said to me, I don't really like your protagonist. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, why? And she said, she doesn't seem grateful. And I went back and it was like just this gem of well, that's why we have beta readers, isn't it?
Yes. So
And I
important.
went back and I looked and I said, oh, she's right. She's exactly right. This is Karen Struck. And she said, and I went back and I said, I have got to make her grateful. I need to
Yeah.
make her, because I know she was, but I wasn't conveying it on the page. In my mind, she was, but I didn't convey it.
And I want to talk about that for a second, a little bit of a divergence in the importance of beta readers. I know that my novel, I had characters show up that I never intended to have show up because I had beta readers ask me questions. But in terms of what you just said, the first time I really thought about it was Lainey Cameron, who does an amazing podcast of her own called The Best of Women's Fiction, taught me an expression, and I think it goes something like pet the cat. So if you have this villain, you need to make that villain likable somehow. So you put a cat in the story and they pet the cat, and then all of a sudden it the person is more relatable. So you found that through the importance of your beta readers. How do you deal with characters that aren't likable?
Yeah, so it was easier with the main character in Reckonings, Roxy, because that was the only thing that was missing, was her just showing that she was grateful. She's harried, she's flawed, her life is hard, but she just never said thank you. And I thought, oh my
Mm.
goodness. And that was so easy. That was an easy fix. But a villain, like in Tangled Lies, I had to make this villain, it's because he has so many chapters. And
Yes.
I wanted people to not trust him, but still find something in him that's so human because he's a well-rounded character. And so that I think about that all the time. I think about people are complex, so he has a soft heart for children.
Yes.
It's Pet the Cat. And it's all throughout his tale. You see what a troubled childhood he had, and you see that he cares about kids, but he's still evil.
Yes, absolutely. So, one of the things I really want to talk to you about is genre. You write in a genre that is very different than mine and is, oh, I don't want to say gory. It's certainly mysterious. There are gory elements. Where does that come from in an author's soul and specifically in yours?
So the first book, the main character Kara is an incest survivor, and so that comes straight from my life. That's what I am. I'm not a
Okay.
survivor. I'm a thriver,
Yes,
and
you
I
are.
am a thriver. But that was a long and painful journey. So that's where that came from. And then for Tangled Lies, um, the murder that starts Tangled Lies off, and the other things that happen, um, it's just
It's
I
those
read,
characters in your head again, isn't it, Karen?
yes, and I read a lot of Baldacci and Patterson, and among other genres, but I do read a lot of thrillers. And so that wasn't hard, although I must say that a friend came up to me who just finished Tangled Lies, and she said, I had to stop and catch my breath a couple of times and say, Karen wrote this. This is my Karen, and she wrote this. And another friend said to me, She said the only thing she said, "Oh, that didn't bother me. The gore, the murder didn't bother me." She said because I just love the characters and I love how I cared about them. She said, but I have to say the sex scenes got me a little uncomfortable because I think of you as kind of like my mentor and my mom, and oh my goodness, she said that.
Mhm.
So everybody is different, but I do try to include reality. What are people's lives really like? And people make love, and people stumble, and people have arguments, and there are evil people in the world.
And that comes through, I think, in both of the books that I've read of yours, that even the evil have a human character, or they have baggage that they were handed, that they wouldn't have wanted to have been handed, and that affects their lives. Not that we're excusing their behavior, but that, they didn't wake up in the morning, and I believe this. I believe this in my soul. Nobody wakes up in the morning and decides, "I'm gonna be evil today." They may do evil, but I don't believe they wake up to do evil. I started out talking about how we both had parallel lives, and we probably did bump into each other in a Delta lounge as we were traveling. But you and I both write women's fiction. Yours has a more mysterious side of it than mine does. We also both write books with multi ethnic characters. And how do you handle that? I get asked that as a Caucasian writer all of the time. Do I have a right to write in other voices? Do I have what gives me a confidence to do that? So I'd love to ask that from the other side of the microphone, because I know what my answer is. I want to live in a multicultural world, and I have beta readers to help me get it right. But I, now that I've given you my answer, what's yours?
Well, first of all, I think it's a beautiful thing that you write multicultural characters. I think that I remember one of the first books that I read as a beta reader, and a white woman wrote it, and she was writing about Black people. And then she said, before she gave me the book to read, she said, I hope that won't make you uncomfortable. And I said, no, why would that make me uncomfortable? I write about white people all the time. So, so it doesn't make me uncomfortable. I think, and getting it right, you want to make sure you get it right. You want to make sure that if there was anything that was off, or um, not true or not real, having people who are honest with you as beta readers to give you feedback. But that would be true if you were writing about somebody who had a disability, or you were writing about somebody who was gay, or anything that you're not. You
Right.
want to get it right. And I think, and tell me if you agree with this, Grace, I think the key is that we are observers of human beings. That every time we're out in the street, every time we're in a store, every time we're on an airplane, wherever we are, we're looking at people all the time. We're noticing mannerisms, we're noticing voice, because we have to
Yeah.
capture voices. We are, I think, as the better the writer, the better the observer, or vice versa.
Oh, I think we're big eavesdroppers. I really do. I think the other thing is that I don't believe any of us are monolithic for myself. That,
Mhm.
yes, I have diverse beta readers, but I would never ask my Native American beta reader to speak for all Native Americans. I wouldn't ask my African American beta reader. I just want to make sure I'm not offensive,
Mhm.
that I have tone right, because we're not all going to agree. You're going to like my character, I hope, as I liked and struggled with some of yours, whether I liked their soul or not, or I could relate to them. So yeah, that's we should talk more about that in another segment as well. One of the things, Karen, I love that you do, part of it is because I'm a New Yorker and you're a New Yorker, at least in our youth. You do not only a wonderful sense of character, place is very, very important for you. You have a scene in Getting It Right in the cemetery where the Major Deegan is right there. And I was there. I was back, visiting my family's cemeteries. Um, but not only do you have that sense of place of geography, I love how you create a feel that the almost the and you're going to say it much better than me because you wrote the words. You had a scene where it was rain trying to become snow, and I could feel that splat on the umbrella. Where does that come from for you?
When I first looked at where the question was going, it was more about the place, the physical geographic place. And I'll, in all confession to your audience, I made stuff up, and I just made stuff up. And then my husband said to me, he said, "Karen, you can't get from Grand Central Station to 135th Street on the train that you said they took." I said, "Oh, okay." So he said, "Come on, we're going to go out and we're going to ride the
Mhm.
train and we're going to go to Woodlawn Cemetery."
Okay.
so, so one of the things that I did do for a sense of place is really go and experience as many of the scenes, even though I had known them as a child. It's so different,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know. Yeah, as going back. As far as the weather and those little things, I work hard on those. What's the sound? What does it feel like? What does it look like? I try to use all senses, all five senses, as much as I can in my writing. Is there a place here for something that smelled a certain way? Is something that felt a
Mhm.
certain way? So I think the answer to that part of the question is I just work hard at it.
And I love that you said that because there's the story, there's the storytelling. Is that something that comes from you in the beginning, or do you have to go back and fill that in?
It's a mix. It really is a mix. I do something that I say that every writing teacher I ever had says not to do, but I edit as I go.
Mhm.
So I write the first chapter and I go back and I read it and I read it
Yeah.
and I think about it and I think about, I change words. I agonize over a word. Is that really the right word I wanted?
Mhm,
Then I
mhm.
go on, then I go back. So it's very iterative, as opposed to somebody who just writes that first draft, just gets it all down and then goes back and changes. I'm very, chapter by chapter, changing as it goes. And sometimes my characters take me someplace else. You said
Yes,
that you met some characters that you hadn't intended to be in the story, and
absolutely.
I'm taking my characters this way, and they
And they do, and they do. Talk to us about Reckoning. Is it similar, different? Tell us.
Tangled Lies is a murder mystery, and so that was a change for me. But Getting It Right and Reckonings are both women's fiction suspense.
Mhm,
And they're about flawed women who are struggling in their own lives, trying to make it in their lives. And so Roxy in Reckonings is 36 years old, and she's old already.
mm,
She's a mother of four kids. She's about to become a grandma. Her 17-year-old daughter is about to have a baby. And Roxy, had had a baby at 18 years old.
mm,
And then she has a son and two rescue dogs and twin girls. And she's just old and she's tired. But she's a writer. And she has decided that if she could get her play shown at the community theater and her childhood friend, who is an actor, to star in it
mhm,
for a week, that her life was going to change. Her life is just going to be, everything is going to be
mhm.
better, that she's going to be able to buy a new house. She's going to get them out of their jobs. Life is just going to be, and of course, that's silly. But, but she says, well, you know, ordinary people win the lottery. It could happen. And so it takes 2 weeks, it takes place in 2 weeks in August. Um, and August is often the time when community theaters
Mhm.
get actors. Actors, they're not working on a movie, and they
Sure.
come. And so her friend does agree to come, but everything goes wrong as one would expect. And and Roxy's a flawed. We love her, but she's not. Her children tell her everything isn't always about you, mom. Everything. Every time we talk to you about something, you say, well, when I was a little girl, and this is what happened to me, and everything isn't about you. And so Roxy learns that. She has to learn that lesson. And it's got some Me Too in it, which is
Okay.
another one of my themes,
Yes.
So it does have a Me Too aspect to it. And our villain is, you kind of like him and you're not sure he's really the villain. And he does good things, but in the end, he's not a good person.
Well, Karen, you're going to have to come back and talk with me after Reckonings is out. I think we have lots more to talk about. You've been a wonderful guest here on the Storytellers, and I hope you'll come back with us.
Thank you.
This has been a copyrighted episode of Authors on the Air, Global Radio Network, and Grace Sammon. Thanks for joining me at the Storytellers microphone.
That concludes this episode of the Storytellers. I'm so glad you could be part of the story today. I hope you share the stories, tell your own, and come back for another episode. Because when our stories are told, everything changes. I'm Grace Sammon.